As we approach psychedelics, there is a dance between action and surrender. And as we're preparing for the journey, I think that's the time that we are called to act and to really think about the environment that we're going into, the people that we're going into, the intentions that we're bringing to it. Like that is your time of action. And when we consume the medicine, when we're at the ceremony, that is the time of surrender. To really give yourself fully, courageously, fearlessly over to the medicine and to let your heart express whatever it needs to express. So there's that period of preparation where you're doing some action. There's that period in the medicine where you're surrendering. And then integration, I view as surrendered action, where we surrender to the lessons of the medicine and we take action that is guided by that. This is the dance. This is the dance with the medicine. And this is the yin and yang of life. And if I had to pick just a word to give as we approach the medicine, I would pick the word courage. If we can go courageously into this medicine and really go into those caves inside of ourselves, that's where the treasure is. One of my favorite quotes in the world is Joseph Campbell's, "In the cave you fear to enter is the treasure that you seek." And I have found that to be true, both with myself and with my clients. There are these places inside that we don't want to go, and that's exactly where we need to go.
Hello, Soul Fam. My name is Lelanea, and I am the creator and host of Conversations with Aya. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to honor the indigenous peoples of the Amazon from Peru, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, and Bolivia, especially the Shipibo Konibo, the Huni Queen, Tucano, Quechua, Ashanika, Quichua, and the many other nations who have safeguarded the sacred traditions of Ayahuasca or Yahe for countless generations. Their songs, their prayers, and their daily lives have carried this medicine forward so that it may reach us today. Yet, as the medicine spreads, we must acknowledge the challenges these communities face. Their forest homes and way of life are under assault from deforestation of big ag and oil companies. Their traditions are often misappropriated or stripped of context due to spiritual tourism. Even the common name of the medicine itself is widely mispronounced in ways that distance it from its roots. These are not small matters. They are part of an ongoing erasure of peoples whose survival is deeply tied to the medicine that we now honor. This podcast exists not to claim the medicine, but to walk humbly with it, remembering always that it comes from living cultures who continue to fight for their land, their language, and their ways. As we share these stories, let us do so with reverence, reciprocity, and respect, always remembering the source, the peoples, the forest, and the songs of the Amazon. And if these stories, the people and the medicine, inspire you, then I ask you to become an activist, protecting the rights of the people, culture, and land. This can be done with your vote, continuing curiosity in what your dollar supports, as well as the ways in which you are accessing ayahuasca. Thank you. May you recognize the powerful creator you are, and please enjoy the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm Benjamin Forrest. I'm here in beautiful Monterey, California, not far from Big Sur, and have gained a real appreciation for the land of the Esalen tribe. Now in part being held by the Esalen Institute, which has been a really beautiful and powerful part of my life these last 4 years as I've been integrating medicine. A lot of history there. And I guess I'll start with how I was called to ayahuasca. I spent 25 years in the military, and I'm not taking, medicines of any kind of that nature. And then after I got out, I found myself going through a dark night of the soul, and I was feeling called to psychedelics. I found a ceremony that was focused on a heroic dose of psilocybin, and in a single night, I transformed. What was depression became joy. What was meaninglessness became purpose. And what was alienation became connection. And I rode that wave after that transformative experience and began feeling a call towards ayahuasca. And I had just moved here to Monterey, didn't know a soul, and I arranged a breathwork ceremony with a yoga teacher there. And within, I don't know, 15 minutes of meeting her, I said, I feel called to ayahuasca. Do you know anybody? And she says, well, I don't know. I don't work with that medicine, but I know somebody who might. And she sent me off to Carmel by the Sea to meet a man named Jason. And I asked him, do you work with ayahuasca? I'm feeling called to it. And he said, no, but I know this woman who does. She's a Russian woman named Dina, and she's one of two people I would trust to hold space for me. And so then, well, that's a good endorsement. And so I traveled to go visit her and had a group ceremony with ayahuasca. And it was an interesting night. I don't know what expectation I brought in there, but I did have this sense of it's not working. And I asked for cup after cup, and eventually the medicine carrier said, I'm not giving you any more, Ben. Lay down and sit with it and go into your body, which was the best possible advice I could have gotten. And it was very different than my experience with psilocybin. There wasn't an obvious revelation that came out of it. It wasn't visual in the way I hear most people describing ayahuasca. It felt more like movements of energies and very physical and definitely a lot of purging. And I left that weekend, 2 nights with ayahuasca thinking, well, maybe that's not my medicine because I'm not sure what that came out of it. I think there was an expectation of some kind of revelation or epiphany or something, but it wasn't that. And so that, well, okay, I'll move on. And there was a gentleman there I met named Andrew. And it was a very interesting connection as we were talking through the course of the weekend. I kept kind of teasing him about, military guys are supposed to look like that, not like me. And on the final day of it, it came out that he had also been an Air Force officer just like me. And we started unwinding things like, well, how long were you in? And were you ever in Iraq? Where in Iraq were you? Who did you work for? What time? And it turns out we had served together in Iraq in 2003, working for the same guy. We're sitting in staff meetings together as young officers. And here, 20 years later, we're consuming medicine together. How interesting. And I bring him up because this story wouldn't continue without him. A couple weeks later, he said, hey, there's going to be another ceremony. I wanted to invite you. And I said, no, I don't think that's my medicine. But it kept nagging at me. I was like, well, I can't make both nights. I can come down for one night. And so I started driving down there. It's in Los Angeles, and my car breaks down. I have a flat tire, and I'm in the middle of nowhere. And I look on my phone, and there's not the tire I need isn't available. The tow truck's not going to be there for 2 hours. So I guess it's time to cancel the ceremony. And then shows up the tow truck. And as we're driving into town, I pointed a auto shop. I said, that one, let's go to that one. And I got in there, and they immediately put me at the front of the list, and they had exactly the tire I needed. And on I went, and I arrived at the ceremony at exactly 5:00, just as scheduled. And I was joking, well, the universe clearly wanted me to be here. In that same night, like it was more of like there's movement of energy, there's purging, but I don't know what's happening. So I leave that weekend and again feeling complete. And Andrew reaches out to me again and says, I'm doing a small private ceremony with my, family and with Dina, and I wanted to invite you. And again, I said no. And again, it nagged at me. I'm like, okay, I don't know why, but I'm supposed to be going down there again. And it's 2 nights with ayahuasca. The first night, same thing. Like, I'm not sure what this is or what it's doing. And then the next night, and this is night 5, dancing with ayahuasca, I start tearing up before I consume the medicine. And there was this sense of like, oh, this is it. This is the breakthrough. And I consumed the medicine and I felt like it was going to be loud or distracting. So I removed myself from the group. I went upstairs, I found a bedroom and wound up howling out the window like an animal. And Dina, the medicine carrier, was beside me at a certain point and howled out the window with me. And it was a cave that I was afraid to go into. Like, I think ayahuasca wanted me to be humbled, and I think she wanted me to look at some things that I wasn't particularly keen on looking at. I had transformed my life, and I had broken a lot of glass in doing so. I had become so focused on my own healing, I wasn't actually appreciating how it was impacting some people around me, including some people who love me, my kids and my ex-wife. Like, that's great. Ben had this great explosion in one and found, happiness and joy, but who did you hurt along the way? That's what she wanted me to look at. That was the revelation that I think maybe I had been avoiding. And so I think back like those first 4 nights with ayahuasca where I felt like, nothing's happening, right? No, something was happening. It was the medicine working through me physically. It was energies being unlocked and humbling me too. That seems to be the lesson that ayahuasca always has for me, is humbling. And once I humbled myself before the medicine, it all came out. And there was a lot of pain to go through. There was sobbing, there was howling, and eventually I felt like, oh, that part's complete, and I went back down to rejoin the group. And on the other side of that was just bliss, just absolute bliss. And as the medicine wore off, I went out into the backyard and looked up at the stars. And it was one of the most beautiful moments of my life. I actually went home and wrote a poem about it. And later included that poem in a book I wrote about the psychedelic journey. And to describe that moment, it was like the miracle of existence. Like the fact that this vessel, Benjamin, exists is kind of miraculous. In that it exists with these other people around me. It's not just that I exist, it's that we exist and that we exist together. And contemplating the stories of the people that were surrounding me. There was a woman who was born in India and had been thrown into the trash as an infant. And a couple of military officers who had served in war zones, and a musician who left behind the rock star life to work on himself. Like, what a fascinating collection of human beings that mathematically shouldn't even exist when you think about everything that had to happen to bring to that moment. It's like, there is a perfect moment. There is a perfect moment, and maybe they're all perfect if we can bring that awareness to them. And since then, I have returned to the medicine many times. And every time it is, just a layer after layer. And it's always like magical now in a way I can appreciate. Those first 4 nights, I don't know, there was work to do with me that I couldn't see. But now when I return to the medicine, I can see it. And I don't know exactly how many nights I've spent with ayahuasca. We guess it's almost 20, somewhere in that ballpark. And at a certain point, I thought, oh, the big revelations are all gone. There's no more caves to go into. I've done my work. And then about 6 months ago, returned to the medicine, and another big cave opened up and brought about a really significant shift in my life. And I've tried, many psychedelic medicines. I'm definitely a psychonaut. I'm somebody who wants to explore consciousness and spirituality and connection and love and all that is found in the medicine. But nothing has spoken to me quite like Aya. It has been like a relationship. In the first 4 dates, if you'll allow that metaphor, I kind of had to like prove myself, or I had to humble myself. Like, she wasn't going to, give me the kiss until I had, shown some worthiness, maybe some humility. And then, yeah, it has felt like a relationship that's ever evolving. And I don't know what the future holds, but my sense is that this medicine will always be a part of my life in some way. And served as a helper and a guardian around the medicine too, which has been, just as powerful maybe as working with it myself. So this relationship I do think will go on forever in some way.
I would love to explore, what does it mean and what does it feel like when you feel called to the medicine?
Mhm. That's a good question and a very difficult one to answer. It's it's like a nag of the heart, maybe. It's like a little tug saying it's time. And what's interesting to me is when I feel that call, I don't always immediately know why. In fact, I typically don't know why. The why doesn't become apparent until maybe a week out or a few days out, or maybe even like the day of the ceremony. It's like I feel the call of the medicine. I make the logistical arrangements I need to go visit the medicine. And then life just presents the why almost on demand as I arrive at the ceremony. Life will present what needs to be worked on. But yeah, I don't know. I think about the hero's journey a lot. Like it is that call to adventure. It is that call to leave the ordinary world and go into the special world. Um, yeah, a yearning of the soul. Who knows?
You mentioned that multiple times you were invited and then you didn't accept the approval or the invitation right off bat.
Mhm.
And you said that she nagged at you.
Yeah, yeah.
What does that mean?
Mhm. I guess I'll reference back to the hero's journey again. So there is that call to adventure, and then one of the steps right after that is the refusal of the call. Resistance that can come up, that no, that needs to be overcome. And it was interesting. Each time I said no, I wound up saying yes. I think there's a part of us that's this highest self, highest wisdom, true self, divine within that knows best. And it has to break through a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise going on in our head, all these thoughts and the default mode network. But there is that other voice back there, and it's not as loud, but it's very persistent. Mhm. And yeah, eventually she gets through. And so those invitations, they can come from that internal place, that internal call. But it was also interesting that there was actually an external, literal call happening in this world too. I wonder what kind of, divine appointments are being orchestrated because, I mean, if Andrew wasn't at that ceremony, I probably would not have gone back to ayahuasca. And so it was like the medicine was working through him to tap at me too and offer that invite. At the same time, it was working within myself to offer that invite. And eventually, internal call and that external invitation kind of just came together. And each time I just realized, oh, I have to go do this. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is the calling. And when that call is strong enough, like nothing can get in the way. Not even a flat tire in the middle of nowhere is going to get in that way if I'm supposed to be at that ceremony. And I do believe I was supposed to be at that ceremony every time.
You've mentioned a couple times that the delay in the first few ceremonies uh, was due to you needing to humble yourself,
Mhm.
that she required you to humble yourself.
Mhm.
What does that mean, to humble yourself? What were you humbling yourself of?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I've been on this planet a number of decades now, and I found that through experience, life had rewarded confidence. Um, I had gotten, I think, too much positive feedback on excessive confidence, and in my worst, probably arrogance. And to bring in arrogance to the medicine is, that does not work, right? And I do feel like that first ceremony, I did kind of stroll in with this almost like cockiness, right? Of give me, more, more, more. I can take this. I can handle this. Like, I think, 25 years of existing as a warrior, like I did kind of bring a warrior mentality to the medicine. And that wasn't what she needed me to be. Or maybe she needs me to be a gentle warrior or a humble warrior. And I had another ceremony probably about a year ago, and the entire theme was around humility. And I realized that, okay, yes, there's some talent and intelligence and creativity here that is pretty unique and special. But, and this was a big but, or maybe an and, that expertise that I have is this tiny little speck on a giant beach. And the more I could put it in perspective and realize how much I don't know and don't understand, everything became amazing. Um, I wound up that night that shedding of excessive confidence and going into humility, becoming fascinated by everything. Once I realized how little I actually know, everything was fascinating. Like literally everything. Oh, wow. Look at that woodwork. I don't know how to do that. Oh, there's these electrical lights. Like I have no idea how electricity actually works beyond like a child's level of understanding. And this guitar that had been being played all night, I don't know how to play that guitar. Certainly not anywhere near the capacity of the musician that night. And who put this together? Like what sort of mind like figured this out? And minds actually, right? Suddenly when I could be humble about my own intelligence and my own talents, the whole world became fascinating. And everybody else in that room is smarter than me about something, maybe even a lot of things. And I'm not going to learn if I stay stuck in my own head with my own ideas. Um, yeah, humility is my ultimate lesson. And somebody else's lesson might be the opposite. Maybe somebody else's self-esteem, self-love, self-confidence is so low that what I need is to show them that they're a goddess. But for me, in I think this confident bravado that I had gained, maybe even earned over life, like, no, that's what needed to be shattered, at least for a little bit.
You said that she had you hanging out the window, howling out the window. What was it that she was showing you that brought you to a place that you felt that you needed to express emotionally through howling?
I don't know. I mentioned earlier that for me, ayahuasca is not visual. Occasionally, deep in the medicine, I'll see some kind of green organic movement, but like I don't get entities, I don't get voices, I don't know a lot of what I hear about other people getting out of ayahuasca. And so that early advice that I had gotten from Dina, go into your body, like for me, I think that's it. It's moving away from the gravitational pull of the head and this meaning making machine to actually just go into the body. And so my process, if I have a process, is to just let the body do what the body's going to do. And sometimes that expresses through dancing, sometimes that expresses through shaking, uh, various movements, certainly purging. I never consume ayahuasca without purging, like it is this intensely physical thing. And so for me, in that humility is just let the body do what it wants to do. And so I don't know why I needed to then go up there and howl out the window, actually. I suppose my meaning-making mind could try to, like, go in and make some sense of that, but I don't know that that's the point or even helpful. It was something that needed to be expressed. I don't know if they were howls of pain or howls of regret, but somehow in that moment, that was the inspiration to go let it out, whatever the it was. Well, that actually don't know.
So what I understand is that when you have ingested plant medicine, ayahuasca, to be specific, that you are not receiving visuals,
Mm,
that it's more emotional based than body based.
mhm,
So I'm very curious, who is she to you? Has she shown up in a form, as an entity,
mhm,
as a feeling, as an emotion?
mhm,
Have you touched her? Have
mhm.
you met her?
Yes, so this idea of ayahuasca being feminine makes perfect sense to me, and the maternal aspect of it resonates with me a lot, because what does a good mother do? I think she scolds and she soothes, and that has always been my, experience, with ayahuasca, and it usually goes in that order, the scolding, then the soothing. Time and time again, when I go to ayahuasca, there's something I have to face about myself that maybe isn't that pleasant. Um, it could be, oh, in my romantic relationship, especially post breakup, there was a lot of confrontation of parts of myself that were showing up really badly in romantic love. And I had to go face that. And that felt like the scolding from Mother Aya. And if I can do that, like if I can face that and I can take that scolding, then it does become a soothing. And so that maternal aspect of it feels very resonant. And it was probably my 16th or so ayahuasca ceremony that for the first time I asked for help. Like I will ask for, water, tissue, whatever. I've always asked for that. But in this ceremony, kind of deep into my relationship with ayahuasca, I actually raised my hand and said, I need to be held. And I specifically wanted to be held by a woman, and it was a woman I knew and felt comfortable with. So I asked her to hold me. She was one of the guardians. And then I was like, "Can I put my head in your lap?" And I wound up like curling up like a little boy, in mother's lap. And in that place, okay, now I can go deep into these feelings I didn't want to face. In the arms of, yeah, mother, okay, I could go into that pain of my inner child who is feeling hurt and lonely and afraid because this, military Ben who's been on the earth so many years, he doesn't actually like to admit that. He doesn't like to admit that there's pain and hurt and loneliness and insecurity inside, but there is. And yeah, I needed to be held by, yeah, by mother, maybe physically and literally in that moment, in order to like go into those feelings, to feel safe enough to go into those wounds. And so I definitely feel the maternal nature of it there, the feminine nature of it strong. There are moments, and I hope this doesn't sound too strange, but like there's moments where it feels like lover. Like in those moments of bliss, like it can feel like, yeah, rolling around, in the lover's embrace. Um, but all of that, to your point, yeah, it is all feeling and it's all physical. I've heard stories about ayahuasca appearing as a snake or a panther. I've never seen or sensed any such thing. I have experienced in DMT and other forms, uh, ayahuasca appearing as a translucent goddess, but with the oral consumption with ayahuasca, no, never anything like that. It's more of a sen
Why do you why do you think that is? Why do you think that you have visuals on other, um, plant medicines, but with
yes.
ayahuasca in particular, you're not getting those visuals?
Sure. So, typically, I don't give visuals on almost all medicines. Um, yeah, mushrooms, the first time I had some visuals, but that was almost a footnote. Um, LSD, nothing. Iboga, was very surprising. I sat with Iboga 5 nights, and at no point did I ever get any visuals whatsoever. And I have reflected on that, and a couple thoughts, do come to mind. One is that our brains are all different, and I don't want it to sound like, ego or specialness or anything, but I do sense when I understand other people's experiences and reflect on my own, I do feel like perhaps I respond differently to psychedelics than maybe most people. And the other thing there, delving a little further there, is I think I may have some degree of aphantasia. Aphantasia is this diminished ability to visualize within the head. So the idea is like some people can think of an apple and they'll see a very crisp apple with indentations and maybe a leaf and a stem. Other people will have like a less vivid image of that. But for me, when somebody says think of an apple, it's more of the idea of the apple. So I think I may have aphantasia to some degree, and that's why psychedelics don't present themselves in that way. And my third thought would be, well, maybe that's the wisdom of the medicine for me. Maybe that's just not what I need. I sometimes get a little FOMO if I'm being honest. When I hear these elaborate visions and entities and talking to God, I'm like, huh, that sounds really interesting. That sounds kind of cool. I kind of want that experience, but it's not my experience.
Is there a conversation at all with her, a communication, a dialogue, anything back and forth?
No, no, I would like that very much, but that's just simply never how it's worked after many nights.
So then what has you going back?
So part of it is the call, right? When I feel the invitation there, I feel like the polite thing to do is answer. The other thing is, to paraphrase a famous movie quote, ayahuasca makes me want to be a better man. I always come out of these ceremonies a better person. And people who don't necessarily know much about medicine will look at the fact that I've gone back to ayahuasca, whatever it is, 20 times over the course of 4 years is excessive or weird, or even people have probed if it's an addiction or something. But my response to them is typically this: well, why do Catholics go to church every Sunday? Right. This is my church. And the circle I travel with, I mean, it is quite literally a legal church, but it's that's not a loophole that they're trying to do with the medicine. No, that is actual reality. This is my church. This is my communion. This is my priestess. This is my congregation. So to not keep going back would feel, I don't know, off to me. And there may be some time where I simply don't need to be consuming the medicine and I'll throttle back, or maybe I'll be a guardian or something. I mean, at a certain point, to quote, I think it's Alan Watts, when you get the message, hang up the phone. I talked about that first night with ayahuasca where I was asking for more medicine, more, 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 and eventually getting cut off by the medicine carrier. And it was about 10 days ago, I had my most recent ceremony. And the very first night, I did the initial round that everybody did. And then I took a second cup. And then I just felt good. I felt complete. And I'd never drank so little before. I usually am somebody who wants to go very deep, or if it calls to be very, very deep, but that just wasn't there present for me at that moment. And then the second night, I went up and I did the initial round, and I actually stopped there. Of all my nights with ayahuasca, I had never consumed so little ayahuasca. And I did have to sit with the decision, like, is that coming from, fear? Is there some cave I don't want to go into? Am I avoiding something? And the answer was a very clear no. Like, it was this sense of I'm good, I'm whole. And so maybe my relationship with the medicine will diminish in terms of quantity. Maybe it will diminish in terms of frequency. Maybe I'll be more of a guardian helper in the future. Perhaps the medicine is done with me for a little while. But if I feel the call, I feel the call. I'll be back.
What does it feel like to you, and what does it mean when you say go deep? How do you know that you're deep?
That's a good question. I think it's the feeling of being overwhelmed by the medicine, of the medicine being more in control than me. I think that is deep. And in those deepest places, the physical expression seems to be most strong. And it is in that deepness where I can see the beginnings of visual, like never to the level of other people, but like when I am deep, like it does kind of break through that visual barrier of my brain, and hints at it's something that could be seen. And maybe those grand visions are actually going on, but they're just not going on in a place of the brain I can access. I don't know. And there can be a beauty in the subtlety of the medicine as well. The times that I have been a guardian, I do consume a small quantity of the medicine to get in the energy of the room, and that can be, yeah, just as powerful in its own way. The experience of being a guardian is something I'd like to explore more. I was surprised how much I enjoyed it. Enjoy might sound like a weird word, but there was a satisfaction from it that was very interesting. Even the emptying of the purge buckets, which in my normal sober state is probably not something I'm super happy about doing, but I'll do it because it needs to be done. But in the medicine space, I actually genuinely enjoy it. As I'm emptying out the bucket, it's like, oh, let me throw out your demons. Let me, throw out your, pain that you've been carrying or whatever. Yeah. I know one friend who's very scientific minded, and I did an ayahuasca ceremony with her one time as part of a group. And we were talking about purging. And she has a, PhD, very scientific mind. She's like, well, the reason people are throwing up is because we've taken this stuff into our belly and our body is expelling it. It's that simple, Pan. Like, maybe, maybe not so, though. I don't think so. I think we actually are purging out some energy, purging out some thing that needs to be released. And I'm okay with using the metaphor of, an exorcism. Like, that's what it feels like to me after I purge, like I'm on the good side of an exorcism, like some demon has been pulled out of me.
Yeah, I think your friend's perspective is great if you're coming from a materialistic, reductionistic standpoint,
And,
operating in a world where space time is fundamental.
mhm,
But if you're a human being who's operating in a reality and in a world where consciousness is fundamental,
mhm,
and the reductionistic, materialistic exploration of the human avatar in its existence is the direction that you're leaning, then you're missing out on that which you cannot see and are unable to see because of your limited human evolution.
And I empathize with where she's coming from. I mean, that was me most of my life, right? I spent 25 years in the military industrial complex. My undergrad degree was computer science. One of my masters is systems engineering. Like I live in this world of, reality is, you know, Western society has been preceding it for a long time. Like I understand and respect science. And I went into my first psychedelic ceremony considering myself an atheist. And I came out of my first psychedelic experience with an experience of the divine. I don't even like to say belief because, belief is different. Like I can believe in something that's wrong or incorrect. I can believe in something that is correct. And belief does almost seem tied in with faith. And this isn't faith to me. It is direct experience. And so I don't have any, doubt around my experience of the divine. I don't want to put a lot of descriptions on labels on it because, the God that can be described is not God. The more words I put on the divine, the further away of it I might be getting. So I try to be very spiritually minimalist, but I do believe in that magic that we can't see. There is a reality that is just as real, maybe more real than this one. And I've been playing a dance in between those two worlds for a number of years, and it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. And the other thing around like the spirituality of it is that true spirituality is secure. When I encounter people with very strong religious beliefs that they try to push upon other people, my sense is that it's coming from maybe a place of insecurity. Like, why do you need to convince me of this? I have my minimalist collection of spiritual beliefs, but I don't feel any need to convince anybody of any of it. If somebody invites me, I'll happy to share, but you can believe what you want to believe, and that's fine. And if you don't agree with me, that's fine too. True spirituality is secure.
Mhm. You said that you went in as an atheist and you came out um, recognizing the divine. What happened in that ceremony for you, especially being that you do not get visuals and you are not interacting with her in a Q&A form or a dialogue form?
Yeah.
So help the viewer understand, those who do have the experience of the conversations, the Q&A, the downloads, the teachings, the visuals. Help us understand your experience
Sure.
that would have you go in as an atheist and come out believing in the divine, because something's happening there.
Yeah. The metaphor I used towards the beginning of the book, I think it's in the preface, was it was as if God reached into my heart, flipped a switch, and brought me to life. It was, I don't know, my burning bush moment of like feeling, experiencing that like finger of God touching on my heart and opening it. Like if I had to describe my first transformational psychedelic experience, like that's what it was. It was the opening of my heart. And I didn't do it. When I got back home from that first psychedelic experience, I remember saying to my wife, I remember the exact words, and she looked kind of horrified in the moment, but I said, either I saw God or this brain is the most amazing thing in the world because I didn't do that. Like whatever explosion of the heart happened to me, whatever transformation happened to me, like I didn't do that. Like the me that thinks it's in control of everything didn't do it. It just happened. And I think that happening, that life moving through us. Oh, maybe that's the divine. I said that same thing to a friend, either I saw God or this brain is the most amazing thing in the world. And she said, well, maybe both of those things are true. And maybe it is, like, maybe there is this, and I referenced the brain, maybe it's not the brain, but there's something back here in here that does seem, yeah, very tied to that divinity, and that it can be tapped into in other ways, but I've never found any way as effective and immediate and as powerful as psychedelics.
And what does God feel like?
Mm. Hmm. Magic comes to mind. Safe comes to mind. And as cliched as it sounds, it is love. I don't think prior to psychedelics I loved myself. In fact, I kind of know I didn't. And after psychedelics, there was this just shameless self-love that I discovered. And the deeper I could go into that self-love, the more I could love other people. I very quickly became, yeah, very, open-hearted and more empathetic and more forgiving. And in that first experience, there was this unwinding of all of this, I don't know, ingratitude and resentment towards life. Like, I spent a lot of time resenting my parents. And in my first psychedelic experience, I was able to actually mentally and I guess emotionally, like, go into their shoes to experience at some level what it was like to be my father at the age of 12, one of 9 kids, losing his father and going from, being solid middle class to being dirt poor just in an instant in a plane crash. Like, oh, that must have been really hard for him. And he was one of all these kids, and boy, he probably barely even felt like he had a father when he had a father because he had so many, and he had to make his own way through everything. Like, people weren't really helping him, so he had to get really strong, and he probably had to close his heart. Like, oh, it makes perfect sense why he is who he is. And there was all this empathy and all this love pouring for him, and resentment just disappeared. And I went into, what I imagined my mother's experience as a lonely young child must have been like. And then, back to my grandparents and back to the first forest that came to America in the Revolutionary War as a redcoat. Oh, he joined the military just like me because he had no other options and he was desperate and broke. And then I kept winding back further and further to like the dawn of man, basically. And like, oh my God, it has been such a struggle. We've all been deeply flawed, wounded people by virtue of being raised by deeply flawed, wounded people, like all the way back to the beginning. Like it's turtles all the way down. And in that place, like there was this deep, universal love for humanity that was tapped into. And even, the most horrible people you can think of, like there is a place there for empathy and love. I mean, in conversation, I've used Jeffrey Dahmer as an example. Obviously, what he did was absolutely horrific, but there can also be like a little place of like how horrible it must have been to been in his mind. That sounds like a really nightmarish place to have been, is in his mind. So God is love. I mean, that's not an original thought, but it seems to be true to answer your question.
You mentioned that as you started doing your healing work through psychedelics, that you weren't taking into consideration
Mhm.
as you were healing how you were affecting those around you.
Mhm.
And I think that that is more common than not
Mhm.
with many people who start their healing journey,
Yeah.
especially through plant medicine,
Mhm.
because the rest of the family is not participating.
Mhm.
So they're watching us from the outside
Mhm.
and they're watching us change. and they're watching us evolve, and they're watching us sit in our emotions more and become more vulnerable and feel. And if they're coming from a mindset and a perspective that resonates with the old version of us,
Yeah.
and they're not exposed to the same energy we're being exposed to, then from their perspective, it can look really strange. And from our perspective, there's a yearning and a desire for closeness.
Mhm.
And we recognize that they can't
Mhm.
reciprocate that, or there's no reciprocity. They can't
Yeah.
mirror that. They can't participate in that.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we all exist as part of a system. And I existed, at the nuclear family level as part of a system. I am, the father. I am the husband. I am the provider. I am the protector. I am the one who doesn't express emotions because I'm playing this role, right? And so if I'm going to step out of that role, well, that's very disruptive to the system. If I want to change, the whole system is shaked off, and people were benefiting from the system and the role I played. And now all of a sudden, like, yeah, it was disruptive. And there can be this desire, when one has a powerful, spiritual, psychological, or psychedelic experience, to want to be around people who are on the journey with you. And I'm divorced now, but this was not a journey that I could go on with my wife. So it wasn't a journey I could go on with my kids. Like, I'm on a journey with them, but it's not this one. And it's interesting the way we're perceived, right? Because I did probably look crazy in that moment. Like, it's kind of a crazy story. This retired military officer goes down to do psychedelics and comes out, full of joy and creativity and vulnerability and wanting to connect, like to transform as instantly I did. It was probably a little shocking. And I probably did look a little crazy at that first time. And it's interesting too that I do feel like the people who have met me in the last 4 or 5 years understand me better than people who've known me my whole life, because I am still being perceived through a certain lens by my brother, by friends who have known me since I was a teenager. Like, and I can't really break through that filter very easily. You're still seeing a version of me that is, I don't want to say irrelevant to today, but not yet clear. And it's a lot easier, I feel, to be seen by people I met in the last 4 years than people who have actually known me for a long time, as strange as that sounds. And I'm playing a different game now. Like, before psychedelics, I was playing the American game, right? I am getting my degrees, I'm doing my investments, I'm getting my promotions, I'm doing exactly what a man is supposed to be doing within the family role. I am communicating at this level because that's what's socially acceptable. I was playing the American game very well. And with psychedelics, the game changed in an instant. And so part of the journey of the last 4 years is finding other people who can play the game with me at the level that I want to play it. And that has meant shedding some friends, and it has definitely been bringing on a lot of new friends. I've had to kind of curate the cast of characters that surround me in order to play the game with the people who are playing at the skill level I need to keep growing, if that makes sense.
I'm very curious, what has integration work looked like for you?
Mm, mm. So I have 4 of the 10 chapters in the book are about integration. It is the most important part. My first integration process, I describe in the book as bonkers. I I had stopped working at that point because I needed to go work on healing myself. And my marriage fell apart very quickly after my psychedelic experience. So all the things that kind of made me, like, my profession and my marriage, and all that just disappeared in an instant, and life was just an empty slate. I integrated by going off basically into the woods and staying in a small condo in a tiny, tiny little town. And all I did all day long was journal and listen to spiritual YouTube videos and read books. And it was like a reprogramming of the mind. Like there was a lot of reprogramming going on. It's kind of amazing that I did what I did because I didn't know what I was doing. But I don't know, I do think like if you listen to that highest wisdom, you listen to that call, you do actually know what to do. And so it was a month almost entirely alone of just reading and writing and listening and talking to a few people who I felt could be helpful in that tender moment. And it also included finding a coach. I went out to this Facebook page and I said, just had my mind blown, I need help. And I got connected with somebody who wound up being actually a perfect fit for me. And then after, a month of like hibernation and processing, then it was back to, living life again. That was an extraordinary moment and an extraordinary integration. Since then, obviously, it looks very different. For me, writing is central to it. I have filled up notebook after notebook of revelations that have come out of journeys. It has become kind of my personal scripture. Like, this is what comes out of Ben in the medicine, and right afterwards, like, this is the notes from the highest self. And maybe that's the gift. Maybe I don't operate so much in visuals, but I can operate really well in words. So the journaling has been important. Affirmations have been remarkably important for me. Again, it's that word-centric, way my brain seems to work. I am astonished by how powerful affirmations have been for me. And artwork too, I started painting very badly after my psychedelic experiences. I've explored photography. I'd become an improv performer. I've done a little stand-up. There was this awakening of creativity in me. I would say reawakening because it's who I was as a child, right? But this awakening and this willingness to explore creativity in a shameless way that has been a huge part of my integration. And all that said, maybe the biggest part of integration is relationships. Most of my big experiences and big epiphanies are actually about relationships and showing up well, both for myself and for the other. My second big psychedelic experience, I came out of, and my integration was, I got out and I wrote down a list of all the people I needed to apologize to or make amends to in some ways. Okay, that's my integration, is going out an apology tour. I had a recent 6 months ago ceremony where I realized, there's this surgery that I've been putting off because I'm afraid of it, and I need to go do it. So my integration from an ayahuasca ceremony was actually going and getting a surgery I needed. So it's going to be different every time, depending on what's there. But yeah, integration is limitless and never ending.
Yes. And what I hear is that your integration is always followed through with some level of actionable steps, whether it is apologies, whether it is an ego death. It sounds very much that's what you went through, was an egoic death, and sat in the liminal space and allowed the dissolving of the programmed ego, and then participated in the new programming of this ego, so that you're operating from a more conscious and more aware version of self. And that's incredibly important. And many people get lost in the experience. And that's where we start to lean into spiritual materialism and spiritual tourism, is when we go for the experience, and yet we don't recognize the integration and the importance of actionable steps to solidify and crystallize that integration.
Absolutely. I have seen, sadly, too many people have really powerful psychedelic experiences and really just crystal clear revelations. And then they just go back to the same old patterns. I've seen it over and over again. And I mean, I empathize with that. It's hard to shake up your life. But if we don't bring the medicine into our day to day life through action, what are we doing? Are we just having an interesting experience? Are we disrespecting the medicine? Are we disrespecting ourselves? Yeah, I think if there's an Achilles heel to all this psychedelic work that people are doing today, it's all around integration. And I see that with empathy because once we get back from a ceremony, like it's really easy to get stuck back into the vortex of, I gotta be at work on Monday and I got this to do. And, my wife wants something and my kids need this. And it's very easy to get stuck back into life. I think having a coach or a therapist can be very helpful, but I recognize that's not necessarily accessible to everybody. And even if it is accessible, are you with the right person to walk with you on that particular journey? And it can sometimes mean making changes that are really hard. I've worked with people who, get a very clear message that they need to quit drinking, for example. And, a year later, there they are. I mean, these patterns are really difficult to get out of the gravitational pull of sometimes. So I don't want to make it kind of like, oh, you guys just start doing your work. No, it's hard, but so is everything worth doing.
Yeah. And I would like to piggyback on that. And I would like to let the viewer know the importance of lining up a coach or a therapist to specialize or participate in integration work. Have them lined up before you go to ceremony.
Yeah.
Because the preparatory work is a huge portion of the inner work. The plant medicine starts before you even get there, before you even ingest.
Yeah.
And being able to really dedicate yourself and your body to this process, having your support in place, go to your ceremony, and when you get out of ceremony that you already have somebody there.
Mhm.
You've already got the first session on the calendar is where you benefit the most.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to do too much of a plug, but one of the motivations I had around writing that book was seeing that there was kind of this gap in the literature. Um, Michael Pollan's book is just so incredible and such a, landmark in the history of psychedelic, literature. But yeah, that's not the integration book, right? The Psychedelic Explorer's Guide is, brilliant and an absolute classic. And it can be a little inaccessible for some people, in its length and in its language. And so I was trying to, simplify and be clear and concise around a lot of these principles that I've had to pick up kind of the hard way through trial and error. Um, I do think there are core principles that are fairly universal around psychedelia. And it doesn't seem like they're being always articulated as clear and as simple as people need. I come across a lot of people who are going to their first psychedelic experience, and there's not really a voice in their life to give them much wisdom around how to approach it, how to navigate it, and especially how to integrate it afterwards. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. Mhm. Uh-huh. Mhm. As we approach psychedelics, there is a dance between action and surrender. And as we're preparing for the journey, I think that's the time that we are called to act and to really think about the environment that we're going into, the people that we're going into, the intentions that we're bringing to it. Like that is your time of action. And when we consume the medicine, when we're at the ceremony, that is the time of surrender, to really give yourself fully, courageously, fearlessly over to the medicine and to let your heart express whatever it needs to express. So there's that period of preparation where you're doing some action. There's that period in the medicine where you're surrendering. And then integration, I view as surrendered action, where we surrender to the lessons of the medicine and we take action that is guided by that. This is the dance. This is the dance with the medicine. And this is the yin and yang of life. And if I had to pick just a word to give as we approach the medicine, I would pick the word courage. If we can go courageously into this medicine and really go into those caves inside of ourselves, that's where the treasure is. One of my favorite quotes in the world is Joseph Campbell's, "In the cave you fear to enter is the treasure that you seek." And I have found that to be true, both with myself and with my clients. There are these places inside that we don't want to go. And that's exactly where we need to go. And just to take the cave metaphor another step further, right? So we go into the cave and there's the dragon that we think we need to slay, and there's the treasure behind the dragon. Here's the trick. The trick is not to pull out your sword and slay the dragon. The trick is to go up and give the dragon a hug. And if you go up and give the dragon a hug and embrace it, it will actually just leave all by itself. And then there's the treasure. And then you take it out and you enjoy it, and then you share it with other people, because that's what a hero does.
It's the wisdom of the paradox.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, there's a lot of paradoxes in this world. Surrender, action. Yeah.
Benjamin, it was such a pleasure to have this conversation with you. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. I think that it'll be very beneficial for those who are out there participating in plant medicine and who are not receiving visuals, who are not having the what would be considered a normal experience within the plant medicine realm and psychedelics. And I believe what you've described will help support those who are kind of questioning those experiences. Again, a link to your book will be found in the description. And I have so much gratitude for you sharing via the book, you sharing via this conversation, and being a guardian for those to rely and lean on as they go through their healing journeys.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
It was such a pleasure. Thank you kindly.